Transport in the time of COVID-19. Update 21st of December. Bumper Christmas special. Last one for 2 weeks. We're back on the 11th of next year. Don't forget. And go to our sites to see previous editions. Contact me there for bits and pieces of news. So here's an interesting graphic. Global greenhouse gas emissions. And the point about this is it looks at transport here, which is a big chunk, and road transport, 11.9% of it. And obviously, if you have a hypermobile society with more road transport, you're going to get more aviation, more shipping, etc., etc. So this is the importance of transport. Okay, now here's a report by Tom Kine and one of his colleagues at Active Travel Academy, which is in LTT, or its online equivalent now. Around 80% of people would be willing to accept a delay to their own car journey to deliver environmental improvements. But he also says most people think petrol and diesel cars make a significant contribution to climate change globally. However, just 41% feel that their own driving plays a significant role. You always get these different answers depending on what kind of question you ask. Okay, here's another one. This is a 2-page briefing from Transport for Quality of Life, Lynn Sloman's mob, and Lisa as well, if she's on here. And here you've got 5 good authoritative statements about the need to reduce total car mileage. So CREDs I've estimated 30 to 50% reduction in total car mileage by 2030 relative to 2020. That's the biggest. The Green Alliance, which I mentioned last week, sort of is in with, and is a very kind of establishment group, estimates that 20 to 30% reduction is needed by 2030. So that's lower, but still pretty massive. Scotland, using Element Energy's study, goes to 20% reduction by 2030. Wales, number of car miles per person cut by 10%. Bristol has got nearly all the vehicles need to be electrified and car mileage to be cut almost in half. On Twitter, I've been talking about the Mayor's transport strategy in London, calling for which came out 2017, I think, calling for 40% reduction in car modal share, not mileage, by 2040. Although it's suggested that in terms of the more recent stuff the Mayor's done on net zero, that needs to be upgraded into something more clear and probably more stringent. So there's some good kind of official types of report. I think they could have also referred to the Committee on Climate Change talking more about a few percent cut. But the Committee on Climate Change is the statutory body which monitors what the government's doing. Okay, repeat of what Junior Transport Minister Trudy Harrison said about how owning a car was outdated, and also still a bit of a fuss about John Stewart breaking ranks. And there's the podcast where he speaks and is interviewed by Cotton Reed. Also, this is by Roger Geffen, and it's based on the Green Alliance report, but it goes into a bit more detail on why we need fewer cars, not just newer cars. I mentioned that last week. I'm mentioning it again because it really is a must read and disseminate. And again, as Roger said last week, government is finally thinking about tackling road injustice. Read his blog post there. Okay, about time. Local authorities have been informed today that news about active Travel England and the National Active Travel Commissioner will be announced shortly. And there will be a shadow Active Travel England working arrangements from January. And it's expected to be formally set up next summer, which is 2 years after it was announced. But I think we file that under slowly getting there. Yeah, so here's the reading list. This is a new one on comfort of cyclists and cycle lanes here, which you should look at. Yeah, all the other stuff I mentioned before. And here, this is from Cycling UK, Duncan Dollymore, I think, about the new highway code. What's good, the hierarchy of danger, which is good, other stuff not so good. Premature mortality of 2050 high bike use scenarios in 17 countries. That's a report saying how many lives would be saved if more people rode bikes. Transport Action Network are still opposing risk 3. Please share the link far and wide up to the deadline of 31st of December. This is the link I mentioned before from Tom Cohen and others. And also with regard to Active Travel Academy, they do a course on modifying transport behaviour. Silvio Gautaro, who's here today, went on it and said it was very, very good if you're interested in behaviour change stuff. So do consider that if you're thinking of doing, I think it's an evening course at Westminster University, the old Regent Street Polytechnic of Central London. Glasgow, don't know if I put that up last week, doesn't look particularly brilliant. Transport Scotland, yeah, there's that figure I mentioned before about aiming to reduce the number of kilometres travelled by car in Scotland by 20% by 2030. And here's what I've been flagging up the past couple of weeks, the list of councils with assurances required. Brighton and Hove has a 25% cut, Thurrock 40% cut, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough has given a reassurance, an assurance or reassurance. Okay, Oxfordshire, a low traffic neighbourhood for East Oxford has been approved. Good news. York, here's something about a cycle path barrier which is making life hard for disabled cyclists. There's an article on how the barrier should be taken out, but it hasn't been. Hull, the pop-up cycle lanes, or some of them, are going to be kept after a vote. Right, now London, here's a lot of figures coming out from London. London traditionally does very good surveys on different modes of transport and what they're about. And here's the first thing I think we should talk about. This is comparing before the pandemic, or rather January to February before the pandemic and afterwards. And the thing I really want people to look at is the working from home, which was like 4% before the pandemic and has gone up and is hanging around about 40%. And that is really going to make, was in fact over 50% at one point. And that is really going to make a big difference to the whole transport scenario. Will Norman's tweeted that there's been a huge increase in the proportion of journeys made on foot and by cycle. A cycle mode share is on average twice as high, 5.3% as opposed to 2.7 compared to 2019, 2020. But you know, I think the figures need a lot of careful reading through. So, for example, this 19.9% is important. Also, the 24.4%. Outer London is where it's big. Inner London, not so much, not so big in terms of increases, and declines, very significant declines in central London. because of people not commuting in. So those figures, and here's again an interesting thing on cycling with the associated trip journey, the purpose of the trip. So cycling to the usual workplace went down a lot, other work related went down, education more or less the same. Shopping and personal leisure, big increase during pandemic. Leisure, big increase during pandemic. So here's something which I'm going to read out because it is quite interesting about key indications, faster than average recovery to demand levels similar and sometimes exceeding those generally seen before the pandemic. All of this in the context of reduced activity and travel more generally. And what they're talking about as they break this down further is that the nature of cycling in London underwent a comprehensive transformation during the pandemic. The dramatic reduction in commuter cycling has been compensated by an increase in home-based leisure trips, what they call a purpose shift. Furthermore, where people used to cycle most days a week before the pandemic, they do so slightly less frequently now, a frequency shift, reflecting a combination of flexible working practices amongst the cycling commuters and a second-order effect of the purpose shift noted above. Also, there's been a temporal shift of cycling demand with large reductions in the busy weekday peak periods that existed before the pandemic and increases in off-peak, particularly weekends. Finally, there's a change in the origin and destinations of trips from mostly radial commuting trips to circular or orbital home-based trips, which is what they call a spatial shift. So the adaptability of cycling and robustness of the outturn numbers to the many challenges posed by the pandemic speak for the resilience of this mode to different travel contexts and the potential to further embed these travel behaviors into the recovery. So that's kind of quite an update, quite an upbeat conclusion to those figures. But do look at the figures all yourself. Less good news. This is Ross Lydall, who's the Evening Standard's transport correspondent, and he's pointing out the TfL have proposed adding £20 a year to council tax bills because they're in dire straits financially. But he's announced changes to the C charge to relax it, that's the congestion charge, so there's less money coming in to TfL. And as Lydall says, he's always said that poorer Londoners don't have cars, so the non-car owners will be in effect subsidising the car owners, because car owners will be paying less and all of us will be paying more through the rates because of the financial crisis. And Simon Monk has tweeted that the mayor cannot please everyone and he has to start to articulate to his base why car use needs to shift radically and how to bring them fully on board, or we face a real return to slow, faltering progress that just upsets everyone while Rome burns. Well said, Simon. Islington, 4 camera enforced filters to go in. Good news. Tower Hamlets, Shadwell Livable Streets project is approved. Hackney, the High Court has rejected a challenge to the ETOs for some Hackney school streets. It's fairly technical stuff, but if you want to read that in Highways magazine, that's could be of interest to you. And there are 3 new cycle routes in Camden being made permanent: York Way, Chalk Farm Road and Prince of Wales Road, and these are indicators of the people supporting in the consultation. Shows why you do need to always respond to consultations. Now, this is an interesting piece about the consultations in Lambeth, responses to the Oval and Railton LTN consultations. This study is indicating that there have been attempts at gaming the consultation process by antis. I think that's sending in multiple responses, that kind of thing. It's a report by Sistra, the consultants. And if you are interested in how antis behave, this is something that you need to read. Right, big occasion. Route C9 opened in Hammersmith and Fulham. It goes through Hammersmith and Fulham and into Ealing. I confess an interest because just along here, the old contraflow cycle lane was extended by yours truly from a design I did when I was there in the mid-90s. The original contraflow was put in by Bill Mount about 10 years before that, or even longer, in the days of GLC, I think. And Bill, of course, was speaking here a few months ago. So quite a few people turned out for that. There's the mayor of Hammersmith and Fulham. And in this group of people about to go off, you see our very own Ruth Mayorkas there. So that was a big festive thing. And there's also been a bit of a fuss because a Conservative councillor drove past making rude comments to the kids and other people there. So anyway, that route is going through, a lot of it is dual cycle lane, and I will be riding up and down that. I think Leo Murray has been doing some studying on it and may have some video or additional responses to make. And there, finally, since you've all liked the photos I picked up of kids playing in the street in the 60s, this one is from the 50s, I think somewhere in London. Sustrans London found it and put it up on Twitter. I did ask for a reference from them, but they haven't given it to me. So if anybody knows about who that photo should be accredited to, do let me know. And that is it for 2021. So do let me know anything which I've got wrong, and any further comments, please.
Anybody got any points of order for Bob? Charles, come on in.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to say something. I know we don't do Europe. It's probably a painful subject for many people, but it was quite momentous last week. The European Commission, for their first time in their history, have really prioritised cycling for urban infrastructure, and they're making various legislative amendments to some of their directives. So various bodies like the ECF and Cycling Industries Europe were very, very pleased with this result. They've been lobbying this for years, and there might be some ripple effect across the channel for us on that.
Yeah, you never know, do you? Yeah, maybe we'll do a big Europe special next year. You know, I'll get some ECF over. I've been trying to get them to come on for ages, so yeah, we'll do.
Do you want to say anything more about Active Travel England, Brian? Anything more to be said?
Not by me.
Okay, anybody else? Anything on London?
Well, I've got Tim. Tim wants to come with a comment. Let's hear from Tim. Not that I'm papering over that one. We can come back and have a little bit of discussion on that later for sure. I'll just bring Tim. He's got his hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Yeah, just Bob. The barriers in York have been about a 15-month battle to try and get better access. A disabled cyclist who's got multiple sclerosis and relies on his bike to as his mobility aid took the council to court. They paid him about £1,500 to sort of settle out of court, but just yesterday they actually removed some base plates on the barriers. I don't know if you can see them very well through there. They still look pretty horrendous. They're K-frames, but they used to have a sort of a bespoke stymy base plate, and that's come out. So you can get through them a bit easier on a bike, and hopefully the disabled cyclist Jamie Wood will get through. On Active Travel England, when I worked for Sustrans, we were doing some work for the DFT on Active Travel England, looking at some of the tools and how they could be, you know, especially the close tool and the junction assessment tool. I did some work on that. Megan, who's still there, might be able to give us a bit more if she can and if she's leaving. But as I'm not working for Sustrans now, I can tell you that. So they may be involved. That's why I posted it in the chat. Okay, but thanks a lot.
Actually, that was perfect, Tim, because what I was going to do today is kind of go around and ask everybody to share kind of what's going on, some kind of reflection of last year, and maybe something that we're looking forward to. So you kind of started off like you were reading my mind there with a little bit of this, because one of the things that I love about ideas with beers, so many things, but because we've got such a great geographical spread, and I just would never find out, and we all wouldn't find out what's going on. Like anyway, like me and Bob would just know about London, and like the Mancunian lot would know about, and you know about York. But it's brilliant to hear around. So that's what I was going to suggest. If there's no more questions for Bob, I was going to do like it's been about a year since we did one of these, a little bit of a run round. So have a little think, stick your hand out. If there's any bit of news locally that you want to share, or just tell us how it's going. Is it all working well? And and also you could share your hopes and aspirations for Active Travel England if we want to go there on that one, or just something that you're kind of looking forward to next year, and we can fill it all with positivity. And this session in my head will kind of work us to, I've got my top 10 moments of the year, which I remember that I did last year, and I thought I'd do that again for people to have a look at. We'll just let Tim, because you're there on screen, you talked a little bit about Active Travelling. What are you hoping will come from them next year, or is there anything else that you want to share with us?
I think for Active Travel England, that they actually get set up and start doing things, and really sort of improving the design standards from local authorities, because I think local authorities struggle with cycle design. You've got engineers who've been there for years who don't really, probably never ridden a bike, and there might be one or two people who's the cycling officer who people refer to, but really to raise the standards and get some decent stuff in, because having retired and worked with the Newcastle, who were really good, I thought, on the Cycle City stuff. Leeds did some really good stuff. In my hometown of York, they are so behind. I mean, it's embarrassing sometimes. So that's what I like to see, and to get those. My personal ambition for next year is to get those K-frames taken out of Hogmore, so everybody can just get onto the moor and enjoy a beautiful 1 kilometre traffic-free route almost to the centre of York without getting stuck, which people do. You can't get through on a cargo bike, a trike, or anything like that. And also Tadcaster Road, which is a main radial into York. We've got the proposals for improving the cycle lanes, which I put in 1991 or something, 1.2 metre wide advisory lanes, which were groundbreaking at the time. Not so good now. We're wanting to get protected bike lanes, so you can cycle from the edge of York right into the centre to this car-free city centre. So that would be my 2 things for York next year. And ideas for beers to carry on, because I think it's a brilliant forum for finding out what's going on all around the country and seeing old friends and some new friends. And it's like a great community of cyclists. So yeah, keep it going, Brian. Thanks for setting it up, mate, and keeping us all in touch.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, York's always been in that sleeping giant category. I'm sure they'll get it together eventually, and that'll come. And I'm with you on the K-frames. It reminded me. I'm reminiscing now because it's the end of the year, but I was following Martin Keeve, like Chris Boardman's guy up in Manchester. He's like whip it quick, and I was trying to keep up with him, and he was on a fixie, and he could just ride straight through those K-frames. I had to stop at every one and wiggle my way around and have to catch them up. So just people like me, we gotta get rid of those things. What is the point? But yeah, no, cheers for that, Tim. Anybody else want to share what's happening in their area and their kind of hopes? Does this work? Of course it does. Let's have a run round and I'll start picking people. Steve, what's happening in Manchester? I haven't been there for 2 years.
Me neither, Brian. we finally start. There's a sub debate. Finally, you may not have spotted it, but there's been a few emails going around about finally debating whether Mancunian Way needs to come down, and whether our great city needs to not have a multi-lane dual carriageway going through the air in the middle of the city. So that'll be exciting. If we could pull that off in 2022, that'd be a winner.
I know we just spent so much money trying to wiggle a really fancy way through it. But yes, no, I agree. It definitely, as someone raised in the shadow of the Mancunian Way, it didn't do me any favors growing up. I'll give you that one. So I'll definitely be there with the TNC. Or I'll bring in Sylvia. What's happening in your neck of the woods?
Hi, thank you, Brian, and happy birthday. This is London, so it's northwest London. So my take for this year is, although the local authority kind of failed spectacularly, we've actually increased the reach, and all this LTN malarkey has completely transformed the relationship that we have with other people. And now there's a very strong base of people who just had enough and who wants change. And with a wider range of intervention, just not cycling. So it's we're going to start 2022 hopefully with quite a lot of people asking for the same thing, and particularly families and mums. I think we had enough, so I'm looking forward to that.
Excellent. Oh, we all need to move to your neck of the woods then. Sounds good. Well, let's hope it comes over here. Yeah, should we come up? Let's keep them coming in. Ant.
Hi, Brian. Thank you. So I'm in Congleton, which Borough Council is Cheshire East, and we have an excellent councillor in Cheshire East who's a cycling and walking champion, Susie Akers-Smith. She tries to do a fabulous job, and she's on the Highways and Transport Committee, and she basically made the committee. Well, she wants to impose 20-mile-an-hour speed limits on a lot of roads in Cheshire East. So Cheshire East came out with a speed management strategy, and I'm just going to post the link to it there. But they're asking, send out a questionnaire to all people in Cheshire East to comment on this speed management strategy. But everyone I've spoken to doesn't know about it because it's the best kept secret in Cheshire East. The speed management strategy that basically lays out what Cheshire East highways are going to do about speed management. And although the councillors, basically the whole initiative of this thing is to get 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, Cheshire East Highways have said in their speed management strategy that they're going to use the system, which I think was developed in 2013, or is noted in 2013 document from Department for Transport, that, and they say this in their management strategy, that no road will be made 20-mile-an-hour speed limit unless the existing average speed is 24 miles an hour, and something to do with the maximum speed is less than 28 miles an hour. So basically, they're only going to put 20-mile-an-hour speed limits on roads where basically their cars are already travelling at 20 miles an hour, which is not quite what the councillors wanted. Anyway, the consultation runs to the end of January, and Rod King is involved. Well, he's not involved. He's helping us to get 20-mile-an-hour speed limits in the borough. And anyway, that's some of what is happening in Cheshire East. Happy birthday and happy Christmas.
Yeah, it was all going so positive then, and then there was that crappy little caveat at the end of it. But it is interesting. I know, like, if we were 5 years ago, when I used to speak to local groups, and nobody had anything really positive to say, particularly outside London now. So there's stuff happening. You have got a good council there, and hold on to her and get as much pushed over the line as you can. And I'm hearing good things about that area as well, and some of the plans that are coming through. So thanks for the update. Good old Cheshire there. I'm good luck with that one. Unbelievable on the speed stuff. All right, let's go with Claire. Claire, what's happening?
Hiya. Well, we had a little end of year walk ride social, so I jotted down, and we asked people to kind of share their reasons to be cheerful. So handily ahead of this meeting, I thought I'd just kind of share with you what they are. So I'll just run through them. So one of the top ones was active travelling men coming soon. But in terms of what's happening locally, we have got over £1 billion for transport funding to GM. Still kind of unclear how that gets decided, what that gets spent on, and also the quality of the actual proposals has to be there to draw down that money. So it's still kind of the jury's out whether we'll actually get that money. we are one of the councils, regional councils, that are pressing on with clean air zones. So that comes in next year. We had a new strategy come out this year called Streets for All, which was a really good piece of work. So if that actually happens, it'll be really good. It's like place-based kind of description on how the streets should be. We've got our Beryl bike scheme launched. So bike hire is back in Manchester. Slightly moot point about whether they're docked or not docked. Actually, I think it's a docked system where you can not have to dock the bike. So that does bode potentially risky for the future. But we've also just had a new cargo bike hire scheme launched in Manchester, and that's gone down pretty well. We've got new Cyclops junctions coming across the area. So if anyone's ever used one of those, they are really positive. They enable, you know, cyclists, pedestrians and drivers to get safely around a junction. We've done some sort of guerrilla stuff locally, which we've started to enjoy. And I want to say we, don't know if I was involved, I may or may not have been, but things like just getting barriers taken out, like, you know, suddenly the barrier ferries have removed the barriers in certain places. That's been nice, not waiting for permission. And similarly, if you enjoyed the grey boxes posters that appeared in Manchester with some rather fruity language on, then, you know, we feel like we might need a bit more of that if words continue to not match deeds. In Manchester, we have had the good news of the Levenshulme active neighbourhood is going in. That's been like one of the sort of touch points of active neighbourhoods in the country. And it's going in. It's not going in quite as full form as the original concept, but it's better than it could have been. We've got a new leader in Manchester City Council. So Richard Leese, who was the leader here for 25 years, he's gone. We've got a woman now leading the troops, and Bev Craig, her slogan is People, Place, Planet, and jury's still out. She's only been in post less than a month, but we hope for good things from her. One of the things that is happening behind the scenes in Manchester is there will be a new walking and cycling strategy launching next year, and there'll be a series of stakeholder events running in the new year where people get to feed in to that, which is, you know, would not have happened under Richard Leese. So that, you know, would have been not done in that way. And there are things happening in the city centre slowly. Deansgate's still a mess, but hopefully that will finally one day be pedestrianised. The Northern Quarter starting to be a place where people on foot are prioritised over cars, that sort of thing. And there's a massive new development in the northeast of Manchester called New Victoria, which is, when it's finished, I think there's going to be about 15,000 new houses there. So it's like a new town, really. And that the developers there really are sort of embedding active travel ideas. Stockport, they have proposed a fairly transformational pedestrianisation scheme for the Underbanks area of Stockport, which is really good. And there is an active neighbourhood going ahead there as well, thanks to Walk Ride in Stockport, in Heaton's area. Salford continues to do good stuff. They've just bought 18 new cargo bikes for the City Council of Salford as well, which would be interesting to see how they use them. And Rochdale, welcome to the B Network party, Rochdale. They approved their first B Network scheme this year. We've still got two councils who are not really playing ball. Bolton, who I see Graham's here, he might want to share anything about that. They're on the naughty step, and Bury is still not 1 yard of bike lane in the whole borough of Bury. So that's just a little whistle-stop tour of some of the good things that our group shared. And one other thing that's a big discussion point here is the relationship between the GMCA and the mayor and TFGM, which is the transport body. And there's definitely a feeling that that is a broken and dysfunctional relationship, in that, in London, the mayor is the chair of TfL and his transport commissioner sits on the board of TfL. And in Greater Manchester, that's not the case. It's done at arm's length. And the board of TFGM have nothing to do with the current transport commissioner, Chris Boardman. and the mayor kind of has to do it through influence. And that's before we get into the political machinations of GMCA and the councils who control the highways. So there's a kind of triangle of political problem there. So that remains our biggest priority as campaigners in this area, is to work on building political will. And some places that's going well, and in some places it's harder.
Nice. I'll bring Graham in a minute, but yeah, Barry and Bolton are part of Team Cyclops, so they're in my good book. I'll bring in Graham to just finish up. We'll keep it a bit regionally because I imagine he's going to talk about Bolton. Ooh, Graham, I can't hear you. What's happened there? We've lost connection to Bolton, everybody. How will we keep this planet going?
He's got his Christmas jumper on as well. Come on.
Oh,
I know Graham's not on mute, so it must be his audio not working.
Yeah, he's trying to figure it out. He'll figure it out.
do it in sound.
Press a few
language,
buttons, Graham. On to the next one. No, still not. But well, I'll move on to the next one, Graham, while you press your buttons, and we'll come back to you, mate. Don't you worry. Definitely want to hear from it. All right, so I'll bring in Bob last, so I know what he's like. To do Ealing. And I'll bring Andy in next. Go on, Andy.
Hi, Brian. Hi, everyone. Yeah, things in Leicester are all about workplace parking levy at the moment. The city mayor's up for a re-election in May time, and we've moved forward with learnings from Nottingham to kind of copy what their approach to the consultations and the kind of campaign around the workplace parking levy opportunities are. So we're pretty excited about that. If it's out for consultation at the moment, I'll put a link in the notes for people to take a look at it. And if it works, then we get kind of an independent form of funding, which obviously served Nottingham well for building their tram. The focus in Leicester is primarily around kind of electric bus services, but we're also rolling out the citywide kind of electric bike share scheme, which has occupied most of my time for the last 12 months, if not longer. This year has been kind of a consolidation on the steps forward that we took with the kind of key worker corridors during the start of the lockdown period. So developing plans to make them permanent. There's about 5 miles of route that we're in the process of making permanent, plus another 5 miles which we're rolling out as part of the Transforming Cities Fund, the kind of active travel fund work. I know Tim's on the call, he'll be familiar with it, but anyone who's not seen the centre of Leicester recently, we're continuing the kind of pedestrianisation process. The final arms of the routes which converge at the clock tower were pedestrianised earlier this year and have been kind of refurbished. They all provide full access for cycling as well as walking. And we're starting work on the partial pedestrianisation of Granby Street, which is from the railway station, in February time next year, as well as St George's, which is kind of a route which is to the east, just within the city centre. Outside the city centre, kind of Abbey Park Road, there's a new bridge going in, and about a mile of routes connecting from Belgrave to the west side of the city. The Putney Road scheme, which for anyone who's a Leicester City football fan, it's kind of the major route from the west of the city, the southeast of the city, to the football ground, and that's been implemented at the moment. It's all got cycle tracks on each of the different arms, and it should, it will complement, it's designed to complement the major expansion of Leicester City's football club, which will be adding about 15,000 extra seats and making a big pedestrian focused plaza in that kind of area of the city. And then we're adding in things like the Saffron Lane corridor scheme, which is just underway at the moment, from the Putney Road junction down to the Pork Pie roundabout. So we'll continue to roll out those kinds of strategic schemes. Next year should really be a kind of a breakthrough year, not least because there may be a re-election, or the city mayor will be up for re-election, and that will mean that there's a kind of a new emphasis on kind of priorities, and it's been very much focused on urban design, kind of social space, public realm improvements for pedestrians and cyclists, and ideally we'll come out the other side of it midsummer with kind of a solid workplace parking levy objective, which will kind of set us moving forward. If anyone wants to visit next year and we're able, just give us a call and we'll take you for a bike ride. That's it for me.
Brilliant, Andy. Nothing but great things from Leicester as always. Chris Heaton Harris's favourite area. I'll do that one. Yeah, brilliant work, mate. Okay, let's hear from. Hey, Graham, have you got that sound sorted? No.
Oh.
Don't know.
Wait a minute, he was nearly there.
Yeah, we heard something then.
You heard something? Oh.
All right. Come on, speak up.
Strange. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you have to be a bit louder.
You're a bit like you're in a little box, but we can hear you. It's worth us all leaning in a bit.
Right. I'll just turn the mic to manual volume control and then see if I can. Can you hear me now?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Seems the automatic gain control wasn't working properly. Okay. So yeah, it's been a frustrating year. We've gone in the space of about 12 months from being the star of Greater Manchester, according to TFGM, in relation to the proposals that have been put in, to being basically in special measures. So that's frustrating. And it's all down to what Mark Granty-Highwayman said in the chat a little earlier, which is that the engineering is relatively easy, the politics is really hard. And really, a lot of what's been happening in Bolton has been down to the politics. We have a brilliant council in terms of the officers, and the good thing that we've got now is that we've got people in public health, the Directorate of Place, including highways, the climate change people, all singing from their same hymn sheet and supporting all this stuff. But it's falling on deaf ears at the top of the elected council, basically. And that's where we're really trying to put a lot of our attention now. All my attention certainly has shifted away from technical stuff onto politics. However, there is good news. I mean, a year ago, we had the opening of a Cyclops Junction, the second one in the world, which is pretty good outside the station. Not many people using it because it wasn't connected to anything, but it is now at least connected into the town centre. We have a two-way cycleway running along Newport Street, that's going to make a big difference. And we also have another protected cycleway across a pretty horrendous junction, the junction between the road that goes out towards Bury and the main sort of dual carriageway coming into the town, St Peter's Way. And it's not perfect. There's things wrong with it, but it's a sign that there are some good things going on. So it's a mixture, really. The other thing is we also have just finished the consultation on the first Streets for All scheme in Farnworth Town Centre, which again, it's not perfect, but it's showing some promise. I mean, it's showing that there is actually some commitment to things happening. So hopefully once Active Travel England gets underway and things start to get serious, maybe the politicians will realise that they can't just ignore this stuff. They can either ride the wave or be dragged along, and it's much better to ride it. So the other thing is we also now have Bolton Critical Mass, which has been running for nearly 6 months now, and the next one will be on the last day of December, which is New Year's Eve. So I'm hoping we get a big turnout for that.
Magic, cheers for that, Graham. It's well worth the update as ever. I'll jump over to Megan.
Hi. So couple things. First is I'm leaving Sus Trans after 8.5 years, which is I'm really sad to be leaving. I'm really excited about what I'm going to, which is economic development, but it means that I'm leaving the sector, not just leaving Sus Trans. So yeah, it's really hard to say goodbye for sure. But Sus Trans itself is up to all sorts of really interesting stuff. So one of them is we've been delivering elected member training on essentially it's LTN 120. We've not called it that because we don't want to scare any of the attendees off, but that's essentially what it is. It's about a lot of it is about it's not technical training. It's about understanding the why. So elected members have all been encouraged multiple times to attend. I think sometimes it's got a bit stuck because it went first to the leaders. So if you've not heard anything from councillors, it might be something that maybe a quiet email rather than a public tweet, because I don't want to get anybody in trouble. But do encourage them to take part. It does talk a lot about, why is this important? How does it affect your constituents? How do you think about people walking and cycling beyond, maybe what they think of as stereotypically people who walk or cycle? It's a really nice training, and it also introduces the 5 principles of design. So not getting really focused on any technical stuff. It's just really broad. What does safe look like? What does comfortable look like? What does that actually feel like? How does that matter to the people who vote? So that's been really exciting to help to deliver. Another kind of national thing is I have been working with some other folks at Sus Trans on a paper on walkability and site allocations. So this is my Active Travel England hope, is that they get involved, or Department for Levelling Up get a bit more serious about where we put new housing developments. And if something that you've not kind of thought of as a campaigner, that's something to really think about, because once those sites are agreed and housing, they get planning permission to put 50, 100, 500, 1,000 houses in a place, that's their transport options pretty much locked in. And so whether or not walkable distances are being considered in that is super, super important for, are we going to actually see the mode shift we need? So we're hoping to put that out as a paper in the new year. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, it'll be jointly done with RTPI, but we'll see what they say. And then more locally, school streets are running in Portsmouth, in Hampshire, and in Southampton. A lot of that has been having them in Southampton and being able to use those as examples to talk about elsewhere. So if you have examples of stuff happening near you, do use that sense of competition, do try to organize site visits, do try to do that sharing, because it does really work. There's also now a regional meeting for council officers who are participating in school streets through Sus Trans. And so that's been a really good opportunity for them to share how it's working for them. And then just another thing in terms of a local thing, but you might find this useful. So St. Denis, which is a neighborhood in Southampton, has had an LTN as a trial. It's been a long trial. It had some really good engagement and co-design for about 18 months pre-COVID. And they've, I think, have now agreed to take the measures and make them permanent, which is fantastic. But one of the things that we did in lockdown was we asked the members of the public who lived there to just do a quick video selfie on their phone. It's something that, without us having any budget, we were able to turn around to just help give that human story about how people were actually finding it, what it was like. And, it didn't cost anything other than someone's time in terms of editing some of the stuff together. But it was really, really worth it to just give that sense. So I think that was it. Something else to share. I'll put the link to that video in the chat in case that's something that's useful for you. Oh, and the other thing was to thank Andy, because back in 2016, 2017, we came up to Leicester, and it was led by local campaigners. They organized it. They brought up officers from Southampton and Portsmouth. It really worked. It inspired them. It got them thinking about it. So if there's, as TCF starts to bring forward more and more schemes, or as you start to see LTN's places, do start to get a sense of where might be good places to have site visits, because the more we can have, the more precedents that are being sent elsewhere. It means that it's not as scary. Local authorities can do it. It's not just bringing people up to Waltham Forest over and over and over again, and then have councillors tell you, oh, but that's London. We couldn't possibly. As we start to build up these good examples, do try to bring, one or two or more councillors along just to have a look, walk around, have a cup of tea, then they can go home again, but just give them those opportunities to really see what it feels like. Right, that's me.
No, that's brilliant. Yeah, no, remember your old pals in transport when you moved sector. And the bit you were saying about housing, I did a talk earlier this week with Stephen Joseph, professor, transport for new homes, and he was calling them cow pat developments. So that's a really good way. Remember that they were just dumped in a field somewhere with no kind of connections and complete car dependence. So there's something to look up on Google. Again, so thanks, Megan. Brilliant. I'll move over to Sally. This is all going great. It's great to hear what everybody's up to. See you, Sally.
Hi. Yeah, it's really good to hear all these things. Quite a lot of exciting things going on in different places. Newcastle has been a year kind of more of announcements than actual any action. Last year, so much stuff went in. Almost all of it is still in, which is good, but we still haven't had announcements about the kind of permanent road closures. We have heard that the one of the main roads which now has cycleways on it temporarily, that's going to be made permanent outside one of the hospitals in the centre of the town. We've also had an announcement about what would have been a Cycle City Round 2 funded scheme has been finally given the go-ahead, and that was first talked about, I don't know, 4 years ago, something like that. So things have just gone back to being really, really slow. Last year, because of that kind of that funding that had to be used really quickly, and the kind of instruction to go ahead and put it in, we saw loads of stuff. But now we've gone back to this kind of really slow waiting for things. So yeah, so we do have some things to look forward to kind of in the ground next year. We've also got the clean air zone coming in, which is for public transport, taxis and lorries, not for private cars, which I think is similar to a lot of the cities outside of London. And we have the announcement last month is that there are now 3 further low traffic neighbourhoods in this city, which they have done some preliminary consultation on, and they are supposed to go in, we think, next month as experimental orders. And one of them is really good. One of them's pretty good. One of them's, okay. So they're pretty ambitious. So we're really pleased about that. We have the sort of, as Megan was talking about, we have the historic issue of developments, particularly in the north and west of the city, that have been in going for years and years and years, and are not gradually being built, and they are, they do have kind of car dependency built into them. Is too late in some of those cases. So we have road widening on the Western Bypass on the A1 to accommodate all this extra traffic. In the city centre, we've had the consultation, the closure of Blackett Street, which is one of the main city centre kind of shopping streets. Northumberland Street here is obviously already closed to motor traffic, all motor traffic. Blackett Street only, you can only, I think it's public transport and taxis at the minute, and some deliveries, and that will all go as well if this is implemented, which we're expecting. And at the same time, there's a new development in the next street, and motor traffic's going to be taken off there, I think, with the exception of, it's not entirely clear, but I think that's going to be cycling and walking. and Blackett Street will be cycling, walking, and Grey Street then will also eventually, we believe, will be pedestrianised. So there's quite ambitious plans for the city centre, but it's all just really slow. And I suspect we're not, there isn't enough funding coming through for this stuff. It's all very stop-start, and we're also waiting for active travelling, because that kind of thing makes such a massive difference. And I think that's everything. If anyone else from Newcastle wants to chip in with anything I've forgotten. So, lots and lots of stuff that's really positive, just so slow that if we carry on at this rate of progress, we're talking about decades before you really make a massive dent into it.
Yeah, I mean, I was feeling a bit guilty about that the other day, because I gave Graham and the team quite a hard time when we did the design review. I hope I didn't slow them down, Sally, because there were great plans. I was trying to polish them.
What we're hoping is that is something like what's implemented, because the last we heard it's changed again. So until it's built, you just don't know what you're going to get. But yeah, I mean, I think that will be positive when it goes in.
Yeah, we've got to get all this stuff built, haven't we? Thanks for that, Sally. I go over to David. Oh man, in Brum, what's happening?
Muted, David.
Oh yeah, you'll get there. Where did that
muted?
Go?
You're muted, David.
I think he knows.
Yeah, I got it.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, there's quite a lot to cover, as there always would be. So I'll try and be brief. I really take what Sally said about the quick, slow, quick, slow progress in trying to do things out in the provinces, because we've been working on a cycling revolution in Birmingham since 2012, and it accelerates and then it stops, then it starts again. But the biggest news for me at the moment is Adam Tranter being appointed as Active Travel Commissioner for the West Midlands. It's really a breath of fresh air, and it reflects, I think, a change in view. We had a new mayor we had the old mayor re-elected, Andy Street, in May, but we made sure active travel was very high on the agenda in all our interactions with the mayoral candidates. And we did that in partnership with a number of people organised by Friends of the Earth. So it was a wider constituency. Adam's come in, Adam, I think he's in his second week now, and he's come off his bike. Did you see that? Because of leaves not cleared on a new cycle lane in Coventry. I hope he's all right. I'm hoping to see him tomorrow. He's coming over to Birmingham to have a look at Broad Street. More about that later. Birmingham has got a clean air zone, and it applies to old diesel cars, very old petrol cars, certainly old diesel cars, as well as other vehicles. It's controversial, but it seems to be working. That certainly air pollution's gone down. So I think it's a success for the council and their ambitious plans. The current with active travel funding currently, we have in Birmingham, this is some good plans, making pop-up schemes permanent, and also making some key links between other routes like the blue routes, which are good, but you've got to get to them, if you want to ride safely around the city. There are 3 COVID-style LTNs in the city, a big consultation on how to whether to keep them, how to modify them. That's become very controversial in King's Heath and Moseley, and everybody else in the West Midlands is looking to see how that pans out. It comes like 14,000 consultees responded. We'll get a report on that in January, so that's something to watch. The hassles in Birmingham are a lot of things are going to be held up because of Commonwealth Games, because they're not, and HS2. They don't want to dig up any more roads because it's pretty chaotic at the moment. Problem in the city centre, which I'll be looking at with Adam tomorrow, I hope, is they're putting in the trams. Trams have very stringent engineering requirements, which just make cycling around them difficult, and they've taken up all the best routes across the city centre. What with that and some developer-funded public realm developments, seems to me the thing about cycling around a city, taking up the new excellent barrel hire bikes, is you need to be able to get to where you want to go to. Otherwise, you're just not going to do it. You're not going to use a bike. And if you've got to keep stopping because it's a tramway right across, or zigzagging along Broad Street on side roads, it's not going to work very well at all, because people want to cycle to these destinations, and it's the same in Digbeth, that people may know. Okay, but basically it's good news and it's accelerating, and there's some very good schemes being designed and supported. So I hope they get through consultation. Coventry, if you've been around Coventry, you get these sort of legacy little cycle lanes that date back for years. I used to think it was good 20 years ago, but they're moving forward again now. And Camden Way has moved to a high standard. Solihull's got some new plans. In the Black Country, we've had extensive consultations about upgrading their LC widths to modern LTN standards. ACOM have been organising that, and we had a whole week of consultations for each of the boroughs in the city in the Black Country, which I think is a good sign because they're raising their game. I've mentioned the elections in May and our engagement. I'd like to say some good things about Action Vision Zero, who helped us have a real impact on the West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner election. And again, we got good sign up, particularly from the candidate who won. So we hope he'll deliver on that. And we're following up with Action Vision Zero. I know Amy's here about that. Just the other thing about, I'd like to say a bit, we back in 2012, we organised a councillors' bike ride. We got 5 councillors to cycle around the city. It was a nightmare, but it really started the ball rolling. We tried to organise one this year. We had people signed up. A great plan, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then the weather forecast just blew it out. One of these rainstorms made it impossible to drag people out on their bikes. We'll try it again in the spring. The other point, and we've learned a bit from Manchester here, is push bikes has been going for well over 20 years, probably 40 years, pushing bicycles, cycling, but it became a smaller and smaller group of people who are actually doing the work. When we started talking about neighbourhood groups getting involved in what they wanted around their neighbourhoods, we expanded the attendance at Zoom seminars, up to 70 people coming along, not all at once, but in groups of 20 or 30. So we're putting in proposals to the Charity Commission to set up a Push Bikes is unincorporated, an incorporated umbrella charity called Walk, Cycle, Play. Partly because we want a bigger constituency of people who will hassle councillors at local ward meetings about improving their neighbourhood, partly active travel. But it does raise a question, I think, about the specificity and expertise that goes into cycling and how you broaden that out to bring in a wider interest in playing out children and walking as well as cycling. Okay, that's the roundup from the West Midlands province.
Yeah, brilliant to hear so much happening, and I really like Walk, Cycle, Play. Now, why? That's the first time I've heard that combination together, and it's like it's perfect. Let's roll with that. Good stuff. Yeah, let's hear from David in Sheffield. What's happening there, David?
Yeah, again, the feast or famine thing is very true to form. I was at the Cycle Forum yesterday, and they were talking about, a lack of officers has held back the number of schemes that we've had. And so there's been a lot of consultations, and there's been a few massive wins in Sheffield. So Pinston Street, which is kind of right outside the town hall, was shut off to emergency for part of the Emergency Active Travel Fund, and it became a huge bum fight locally, politically. And the politicians who support it very astutely kind of have steered it to kind of very much stick in. So I think that's been a massive win, largely for walking rather than for cycling, but kind of a massive win. Also on the kind of what's called connecting Sheffield stuff, there's quite a lot kind of that's proposed to happen over the next couple of years, including effectively bus gates around the entire city centre, which will turn the city centre into a low traffic neighbourhood. So that's a massive win. The officers in Sheffield are brilliant, and I have to say the politicians are leading pretty bloody well, especially considering we have kind of everything everyone else has, plus we're so hilly, people go, you can't cycle in Sheffield, it's full of hills. So yeah, it's kind of an extra challenge. The first of those kind of went in as emergency active travel. There'll be some more of those in the next financial year, and then some more by 2023, so that feels quite satisfying. School streets, the first 10 are in the Sheffield area. Even more excitingly than that, Sarah Story is our cycling commissioner for the Sheffield City region, and lots have started to go in Barnsley and Doncaster, and they are really popular in Barnsley and Doncaster, which I think kind of no one was really expecting. There's massive clamour to get more of them in both of those places. It's really positive. I mean, they're just such a massive win for us. Couple of things, the clean air zone's been consulted on. Again, it's a big political bun fight, but again, the politicians are being brave. They've included the inner ring road, which will kind of make a massive difference to the air quality. Pavement parking ban. I think it's one of the few things where we're actually ahead of kind of quite a lot of other places. So pavement parking ban right across the city centre. So kudos to the council for that. Again, there's clamour to expand it. And then a couple of things. Again, it's interesting following on from the Birmingham thing. We've had one local group spring up that are brilliant, a Living Streets group in the Hunters Bar area, for those who know it, by essentially a couple of mums at Hunters Bar Primary, and they are absolutely fantastic. I went with them on their bike bus a couple of weeks ago, and they're just brilliant. If we could get more people like that involved, and I think there's lots of people latent kind of demand for people like that in Sheffield. It's just, it can seem overwhelming and a lot. And, I mean, all of the people here know how difficult it is to engage with councils. Yeah, like I said, the politicians and the Greens are in coalition with the Labour Party. Both of them are being relatively quite brave in terms of proposing cycling schemes, which really get a lot of stick in our kind of local Facebook groups, as I'm sure they do everywhere. I've seen, for example, I used to live in Levenshulme, and Levy Massive is a nightmare when it comes to the LTN there. And, it's the same here. But yeah, absolute kudos to them and the mayor as well, Dan Jarvis, who's sadly standing down. So we're having a bit of a crack at the Labour candidates who we think are highly likely to win South Yorkshire mayoralty. A couple of other things in the Sheffield-ish area that are a bit wider, that are exciting as well. I don't know if anyone is on from Chesterfield, but again, massive respect to them as a cycling campaign, because they do a great job. There's an east-west route going in as part of emergency active travel, and they had Crow Lane, which is the kind of main route to the hospital, closed off. And again, Chesterfield is hilly and a smaller town, so it's not necessarily easy winning for cycling. I think massive respect to the campaign there. And then a couple of months ago, the Peak District National Park has started to make very exciting noises on cycling and banning cars, particularly in the bit near around Sheffield. So closing some roads off to traffic and filtering them that aren't surrounded by houses at all. They're just roads up to kind of mountains and stuff. And they're also pushing the train company Northern quite hard to do a ScotRail style carriages, although that would be quite difficult. Whether it's just words or whether we'll see some action, I don't know, but it's very exciting that those words are coming out, I think. So yeah, that's everything from me.
Yeah, super exciting. And I really like the pavement parking thing as well. And it's worth everybody remembering that you can clearly and easily ban pavement parking. What we're asking for is it to just be the default. So you have to put an order in, to allow it. But really, there's nothing stopping people taking it seriously and doing something about it now. So kudos to you up in Sheffield, and great input there. I enjoyed that one. Thanks. All right, who have we got next? Paul, Cardiff. Let's get international.
Thanks, Brian. Can you hear me okay?
Yep,
cool. Right, yeah, update from Cardiff specifically and Wales generally. I think this year we've kind of enjoyed a significantly bigger active travel budget than previous years, which is good. And the political makeup of the Welsh Assembly after the elections this year, that's likely, I think, to sustain that level of spending and certainly maintain, if not accelerate, the active travel stuff going on in Wales, which is good. The budget that's available to local authorities in Wales is it's not divided equally between the local authorities. I think it's basically those areas that are the most forward thinking and put in the most bids will get the most money, which is good if you're in an area like Cardiff that I am, and not so good if you're in a local authority area that's not particularly forward thinking. After the election, there was a kind of reshuffle in the Welsh Assembly, and a statement of intent. Some of you may have seen that the devolved transport power now comes underneath climate change, which is great. That raised a few eyebrows, and that's gone there very well with the active travel people here. What else have we got? You might have also seen as well, not long after the elections, the Welsh Assembly put all road expansion schemes on hold. All the ones that didn't actually have spade in the ground, those are all now subject to review. And my understanding is there is a kind of heavy environmental bias to that review process, which is great. More specifically here in Cardiff, Cardiff Council have had a kind of good year, but a couple of negatives as well. Positive stuff, there's fair few pop-up routes gone in and also some permanent stuff gone in. There's some permanent stuff which is not far off opening, and there's plenty of other permanent stuff as well in the pipeline for next year and beyond, which is good. There was a small school streets pilot probably getting on to 12 months ago now, and that ballooned very, very quickly. So we got loads of school streets in Cardiff now, which is great. I think the one thing one of the things that's disappointed a lot of people is Cardiff wanted to do a hanger pilot for cycle hangers, and that's stalled with other priorities. And there's been a fair amount of gnashing of teeth with for those people who had kind of had their eyes on a cycle hanger. The other bit of disappointing news, not specific Cardiff Council related, is you might have seen in the news the Next Bike Hire scheme in Cardiff. That was halted just a month or two ago now. That went in pre-pandemic and was very, very quickly a very successful scheme. I think it was quite quickly the busiest Next Bike scheme in the UK. But they called a halt to it a couple of months ago because of the recent level of thefts and vandalism. Their plan is to get on top of the repairs for the fleet and bring in new bikes and relaunch again in March. And I know they're doing stuff with Cardiff Council and South Wales Police. So there's a lot of people got their fingers crossed that from the relaunch they won't suffer the same degree of problems that they've seen recently. So that's it about probably for Wales and Cardiff. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, yeah, definitely pushing ahead. All my dealings with Welsh people in government have been super positive over the last year, so it's good to see it all turn into building stuff as well.
Yeah, it's an exciting time.
Yeah, indeed. Thanks, Paul. Okay, let's go over to Sam. Sam in Stirling, good man.
Yeah, Stirling, Scotland, although my accent probably gives it away that I'm not from Scotland at all. I'm going to have a quick chat about one of the projects we've been involved with. I'm a landscape architect working in private practice, and one of the things that we've been working on in Edinburgh was a master plan for Meadow Bank, which I don't know whether anybody's come across it before. It's about a mile and a half from the centre of Edinburgh, and the history of the site was that it was an old railway goods yard, which was then given over to the Commonwealth Games Stadium in the 1960s. And after Edinburgh kind of reassessed their sporting provision, they then looked to redevelop the sports side of it, but then the surrounding land turning into a residential development, as quite often happens everywhere. So 600 homes was the kind of the sort of the benchmark, and they put forward a planning application which was refused, but it was very car centric, essentially blocks that were sort of donutted with roads, and the local community kind of were up in arms, and it got refused straight away. So different set of consultants were employed, us being one of them, and sort of quite fortunate that we started with a blank sheet of, how do we solve this, because we can't just go down that same route again, because we'll just end up in the same position. So we were chatting away with, between ourselves, how do we make this kind of, a place where we want to get people, living and choosing more active lifestyles. And I went and had a chat with an old friend who came across when I first started cycling, a chap called Kim Harding, who set up the Edinburgh Festival of Cycling. And his kind of immediate thing was why don't you just go car free? And you know, it's a bit of a bold sort of thing to sort of take on board. But I went along to did a bit of research, you know, and gave me some examples, went along to design team meeting and was like, well, you know, can we do this? And fortunately, the architects who we were working with were quite keen on pursuing it, and so was the client. So they're quite brave in doing that and looking, you know, how do we kind of make a place where people want to live and be active in their lifestyles? But the problem that we found was there's a ton of advice out there. You know, I'm sort of looking at LTN 120 and Cycling by Design, which has just been updated in Scotland, which is great at sort of talking about how we get people from A to B. And there's quite a few things with grants, etc., on how to improve B, like workplaces, getting showers put in, you know, making it so that when people get there, they feel as though they're kind of catered for. You know, there's more and more places that you can't get through a planning application without cycle storage. However, you know, it might be crap some of the time, but it is there. But in A, i.e. people's homes, we're still designing, you know, boxes with 2-car driveways and you know, places to put cars rather than places to store bikes. And the streets are all generally, you know, 6 point whatever meters wide with footways, and then your homes beyond that. So we kind of looked at, you know, well, what does it mean if you're trying to kind of design a place where you're actually wanting to change things for the future so that people feel as though, you know, this isn't a place for cars, this is a place where you live if you want to walk or, you know, cycle to your destinations. So we started looking at sort of street widths. There's no parking other than 22 accessible spaces, which, you know, are a requirement, and 6 car share spaces, which are right at the front of the site, because we wanted those to be kind of like pushed right the way out so that it didn't encourage people to have them right next to their houses where they could just go, oh, I'll take one of those cars today. But one of the things that we did look at was having places for people to store bikes. So this was a whole range of stuff, like stores in the front gardens, which will have, you know, power supplies so you can charge e-bikes. Stores within the streets themselves so that people, you know, might be a bit less kind of concerned about their bikes, but, you know, still lockable and that. But also going into the homes and having sort of widened hallways, because we were chatting about, you know, kind of people going into people's houses, you know, you have these sort of bikes stacked up in the hallway. So we looked at sort of a recess. So rather than them coming out into the hallway, they go back into the wall. These sorts of things, so that there's kind of a range of different opportunities for people. Another thing was to kind of look at how the streets work themselves. So we looked at play on the way stuff. You know, if you're walking with your kids, you want them to have fun while you're walking, because I don't know if anyone's got kids dragging them along, they're like, I'm gonna have to walk. And so having like little hopping stuff that they can do on the way was important. And that we sort of combined that as well with me being a landscape architect. I'm really kind of keen on this. If you're doing active travel links, make them really, really multifunctional. Like resolving climate issues, you know, is about as much kind of people choosing different ways to get around, but also we need to deal with the effects of climate change. So make your routes multifunctional, put in rain gardens, shout for rain gardens where you can. We need to slow down that water going into the system. So we're kind of doing this from the get-go. The other things that we've done was put in the proposal for an active travel hub to be part of it, you know, supporting people that live there, making sure that they can, you know, I suppose it's like having a garage on site, isn't it? But also teaching people how to do things themselves as well. And the other thing was connecting adjacent communities as well. Part of the design in the 60s was to really sort of clip off some of the communities to the north, and we were actually opening up an old road to create a better link to quite a big part of sort of northeast Edinburgh. Yeah, that took a bit of looking at, but it was crucial in kind of bringing those adjacent communities with us, who they were all concerned about losing their parking and all that sort of thing. But I mean, what they kind of haven't really faced up to is that controlled parking zones are coming to their area anyway. So, you know, that kind of on-street parking outside their bits is really going to change. But I guess the big thing for me is just, you know, we need to make new homes friendlier for people so that we're not forcing them down this route of building, you know, out of town and everyone just kind of has their parking space and drives everywhere. So that was kind of my thing, you know. So if we can collectively push for better design standards for the way people live, then we'll hopefully end up in a few years where people do live a little bit differently.
Yeah, look, I'm absolutely loving this, Sam. I just wondered if you'd want to come back and do like a full session on it. So I think there's like some really juicy bits there that I wouldn't mind doing a bit of a deep dive on some of those aspects of it, because it's like a crucial one and it's great that you're thinking of it. So yeah, have a think, but we'd love to have you on and just like base the whole session around that topic, because it's so hot and you've done really well covering all the bases of it. I just think, you know, we need to drill in.
Try to rattle through it as quickly as possible.
Yeah, no, kudos to Edinburgh for pushing this. I know there's a few places pushing car-free developments now. We've got to get them in, just so I can know where to move to. They don't sort it out in London. All right, but yeah, cheers, Sam. That was brilliant. And let me know if you want to come back and we'll do a whole session.
I'll shoot you an email.
Yeah, that'd be great, mate. Awesome. All right, we'll go back to London in the form of Simon. Now we will get through everybody, because it's Christmas, goddammit, and everybody gets their say.
Yeah, I was just
it's that time of year for the non-Christmas lovers, I should say. Go on, Simon. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think Bob's covered off, and I arrived late, so Bob's probably covered off London. All I was going to say was just following on from Sally and a couple of other people, you know, said about that kind of, you're waiting for ages and then schemes arrive and then things roll back, and that kind of slow, quick, slow kind of feel. I'm aiming to come back. I said, I think a couple of weeks ago, I'm aiming to come back in January and talk about critical friend campaigning and how to do it. But I just think there's a real learning from London maybe and what we've been through in terms of knowing when those pauses, and that, you know, London's going through one right now, as it were. Those pauses are a good thing, and when they're a bad thing, and knowing when to kind of start shoving people and kind of getting angry, and when to just go behind the scenes and go, should we be concerned about this? Why is there a delay, etc. So I just think, you know, and I can't speak for London, let alone the whole country in this respect, but I think it's worth having a think as campaigners wherever you are. If you've hit a pause or there's a slow bit and you're getting frustrated or something's going wrong, why is that happening? What does it do? You know, who's best to talk to, and what the best levers are to pull always, because they aren't necessarily the obvious ones. I think is I guess all I was trying to say on that. I think I'm probably just going to sleep now on the desk. Merry Christmas all.
No, that's a really good point, Simon. I think that was really well made as well. All right, let's bring in Leo, and then I'll definitely go to Bob.
Thanks, guys. I'm slightly COVIDy, so not quite my normal perky self, but Ruth was very keen that I put in an appearance to say something about the opening of Cycleway 9. So I say the opening of Cycleway 9. It's just a bit of Cycleway 9. It's the bit that happens to be the bit where I live, in Hammersmith. It's been on the cards for many years, and it's something that I've personally campaigned for locally for a long time. So it's been terribly gratifying. And I had planned a community event for Saturday the 18th. And I'd planned it, you know, some months in advance, having looked at the timetables, and I knew it was going to be a bit risky. But Hammersmith contract with Conway stipulated that they had to complete all the works by midnight on the Thursday night. So slightly miraculously, they did it. I mean, actually, it's missing a pedestrian refuge, but there's a pedestrian refuge which still needs to be reinstated. Everything else got done. And I think I just want to say, I did this. This is in my spare time, what I laughingly think of as my spare time. Some of you will know that I work professionally on sustainable transport, but this is in my neck of the woods. And what I did was put together a local group, a common interest group out of parents. And I think this is worth sharing because I realised going to C9 public engagement events with the council and the TfL a few years back, I would go and I'd be looking around me and I'd be in a sea of grey and there were angry pinched faces and realising that actually, if I step out onto the high street, which they're proposing to transform, I'll be immediately passed by parents in backfeets and Christiana bikes. Hammersmith have got more and more of those. People with tag-alongs, child seats. But those people I never saw at the events that were being held because working parents are busy people and they don't have all the time in the world to write letters to councillors. Unlike all the people who are showing up at these things, it suddenly dawned on me that that's who the councillors were hearing from. And so the weird, distorted images they've got of cycling in their head, some of them who don't do it, that's where it's coming from. I realised that we were just there was an important local interest group that was unrepresented in this. And what I did was I started, because I'm a parent, I've got kids at primary school. I started with other parents that I knew cycled their kids to school, obviously at my own kids' school. But I then realised that actually I was being passed. I'd see the same 5 mums every day, on their way to some nursery or something. And so I started printing up. I printed up cards, W6 Safe Cycling Families, and started to just assemble an interest group from people, strangers, but people that I would see riding with their kids. And actually, as a tactic, it was just incredibly effective because you can see them. You can see who the other people are, the cycling parents, because they're there with their kids on bikes. So actually, you're starting from a position of sort of a shared interest and mutual trust scenario. It can be quite difficult to start. I've done lots of activism over the years, and it can be quite difficult to seed groups. But of course, this was just I'd go to the park with my kids, and then as I'm in the playground, 5 parents show up, kids on bikes. So that as a tactic has just been phenomenally successful in providing a voice to that constituency that was unrepresented. And this ride that we did on Saturday is really a sort of culmination of that as a campaigning tactic because, the experience I think that Wesley Harcourt had, who's the councillor responsible for transport and environment at Hammersmith and Fulham, his experience of coming to Lyric Square was there was well over 100 people, maybe pushing 200 people there, all just local families, exactly the kind of people that politicians view as legitimate, right? View as important stakeholders, cheering him for building a cycle lane that he's fielded unbelievable numbers of angry next door posts about, right? But that experience, and then PJ, the mayor, coming on the ride with us, is just worth 10,000 angry next door exchanges. And, it was really palpable. And actually, I know from multiple sources that the engagement of the local parents group in this process has been instrumental in building the political will in Hammersmith and Fulham Council to actually go ahead with this. Now, slightly euphemistic, that phrase, building political will, it already exists in some places and others it doesn't, but it's one of the things that really swung it. So there's some brilliant pictures from the day, really beautiful, and I'm happy to share a link. People can help themselves to the photos in there. We've got loads of great photos and footage of just kids looking happy in a big group riding in a bike lane. So hopefully that will be useful. I'll send it to Brian and he can circulate the link after. Great. I think that's everything that I wanted to say, Brian. It was worth reporting, I think. It was a very joyous occasion. Jeremy Viner sent some quite funny tweets about. We got shouted at by the former chair of the local Conservative Association in Chiswick, who is one of the key members of One Chiswick. He leaned out the window of his SUV as he drove past and shouted, "Get off your bike!" shouting at the kids. Jeremy Vine's got it on his 360, so quite comical. But yeah, it was a great day. People went away buzzing. We'll do it again when they do the gyratory, and we will use this as a bit of soft power push TFL on Kew Bridge where there's no connection, and push obviously Kensington and Chelsea, because pretty much Hammersmith, you know, we're making our way up to the border, marching onwards to the border up Hammersmith Road. So that's the next step. Great, thanks very much, everyone.
No, that was awesome. That was a really brilliant high for the end of the Christmas special, that one. And as someone who I've had 3 or 4 goes at that corridor over the past 20 years, so I think this is a brilliant way of helping see it through, because it needed this kind of groundswell. So just brilliant work all around, mate. And thanks for sharing with us. All right, let's go to Bob. I've made him wait about an hour now to come in.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Yeah, a few little bits and one big bit, which will be my thought for the year. Yeah, Sylvia pointed out she'd been on this Active Travel Academy course on soft measures and how good it was. One of my pet hates is dividing into soft and hard, because things like direct support for cycling can be very concrete and good things to do. But what I was really going to get onto is the sort of battle of ideas, because we've talked about kind of physical infrastructure, but what I'm really interested in, and you know my presentation a few weeks ago, is this battle of ideas business. And what I notice is, in some ways it's quite positive, that when bad things happen, there's a kind of good set of responses. So if you take the example of this very bad victim blaming road safety campaign by TfL, which was paused, there were lots and lots of people responding and saying, no, we're not having this, it's wrong, and giving reasons for it and being polite, being witty, and lots of people saying this. That wouldn't have happened some years ago. So I think that's good. That what someone like Steve, an old lefty, would call waging ideological struggle, no doubt. So I think that's important, because, you know, we do have the sort of bad things. The housing developments issue is a really crucial issue in terms of not only locking in car dependence, but the amount of green belt being taken away. It's very important for leisure active travel. And we've got Active Travel England coming in. Tim Morton asked about what status it's going to have. That's the thing we've got to look forward to. But for me, the reason why I talk about ideas and culture is because what's really kept me going over the past couple of years, when we've had Brexit and COVID and the cop-out at COP26, what's kept me going is the commitment towards reallocating road space, which came out with gear change and LTN 120. And that's kind of literally, you know, it's sort of kept the spirits from falling to pieces. And Richard Lewis said the other day that, you know, if Johnson goes, I mean, he will eventually, but if he goes, you know, please don't have Gilligan going. Please have Active Travel England in place, and a Minister for Transport who'll be able to back things up, because we do need that. And it has kept me going, and we do have to keep that ideological and cultural struggle going. And with that, I wish you the very best for a productive 2022.
Magic. Thanks, Bob. You covered a lot of ground there. That was good stuff. Well, we're running a little bit over, and we're definitely going to do Ruth last word. But I wanted to share like 10 moments to remember over the past year. We generate some amazing content, and sometimes, you know, it all goes past, and you kind of forget about it. Maybe you missed a few. So I'm gonna do them in roughly my favorites order. So anyway, here's my list of like the ones you might have missed that's worth checking out on the YouTube channel. There were like number 10, I've got Michael Barrett in there. And it took me about a year to get Michael Barrett on here. He's like I've always had a man crush on Michael Barrett, and getting him in to do a talk on like cargo logistics was brilliant. Must get him again. And I think number 10. I think he can up his game. He should be. If you get the full Michael Barrett, get #1 spot. But hey, that's a challenge for him. Lisa Hopkinson's one, which we separated on like a car-free living, was just like a succinct and like brilliantly put as everything that Transport for Quality of Life do. So anyway, that's a separate video up there. Just everybody should watch that. As far as I'm concerned, they should stop the Queen's message and put Lisa's message on Christmas Day. But anyway, the next one I've got down. Oh yeah, when we had Martin in from Cycle Streets and he showed us the LTN stuff, like a add-on, and we all had the LTNs are not new passwords, and we're playing with that. I use that at least every other day in my life, so I'm just so excited that you launched that here. Number 7, we're counting them down now, and we're top of the pops. Yeah, Peter Cox and the politics of cycling infrastructure. I mean, Peter's always been my hero, and I know I always say that, but he's the real one. Don't tell the others that. And I thought he was brilliant, and he just always like makes me think a few steps further than my brain would normally go. Coming in at number 6, Phil Jones and Mark Philpotts. When I asked them to talk about infrastructure, and they just ended up talking a little bit about the philosophy of infrastructure, it was really like a completely deep and illuminating talk, which is definitely worth going and have a look at. Just two masters of the arts, like going for it, just phenomenal. Number 5, when we had our journalism special, and Helen Pidd and Laura Laker were on, I just thought that was great. I mean, I try occasionally to theme them around topics, and that was particularly good hearing them from the face of journalism, which you don't often hear about. Then number 4, we had like our AV special with like Christian Woolmar and John Parkin, the Professor and Woolmar together. That was just brilliant content, and really cutting edge. Well, that was good. At number 3, now only number 3 because he spread it so wide. It really should have been number 1 for his contributions. That's Mark Hodgson on third-party reporting and close passing. Well, one of the things I promised to do over the seasonal period of Christmas is get them all together and put them all into one big block, because I kind of think every single council and every single campaigner should watch some of the amazing content that Mark did then. At number 2, I loved it. It really thinned people out there, all 3 parts of it, but Huxford and Harrison's like history of highways. Come on, like BBC 4 will never get content as good as that. That was phenomenal. And then the number one we've heard from him tonight, Dr. Cooper and Shan Wilkinson, when they did the whole like LTNs in Bolton, and it was so good again that we separated it. It's still I think my favorite moment, because they were just so on point all the way through. There's the top 10 things that you might have missed throughout the year. And like to round it all off, let's go over to Ruth for the kind of final word, and then we'll see you in January. Thanks everybody for turning up. Ruth, over to you.
Thanks everybody. So here I am. I don't know if you can see the sequins, but those of you who know me and know my photos, I don't wear high vis, I don't wear a helmet, and I very rarely wear lycra unless I'm doing a properly long journey. So for the amazing ride that Leo set up on Saturday, I was wearing a frock and heels and the sequin gilet. I want to do a shout out for our cycle sisters, because they are the most extraordinary bunch of women, set up partly from Joy Riders, but they're now Hounslow Cycle Sisters. There's 70 of them. Fatima Ahmed, who, I might try and get her to come and speak, but they all wear these lovely sparkly sequin gilets, which come from a company called Go Flu. And the just extraordinary thing about cycling is I was doing my shopping today on my bike on C9, and as I came through the traffic lights, waiting at red, as I always do, there was Fatima and a lovely woman called Myra coming the opposite direction, and they were on their way to cycle up to central London to look at the lights, both in their sequin gilets, with lights absolutely everywhere, all over their bikes, wholly festooned. So kind of my message is that when you do cycle, try and wear things that are a bit fun, try and make it more interesting, that it is just, a way of getting around. And, don't always go for the old yellow and helmets and lycra and whatever. So, even if it's high vis, it can be sequined high vis. So have a wonderful, wonderful Christmas and New Year. and look forward to seeing you all in 2022.